welcome to the next installment of Better Know a Writer. I am here with Luann Koester today, and she is the author of
Hawk's Cry, the story of a Cheyenne hero.
Awesome. And can you tell us just a little bit about your book and maybe your inspiration for it?
Okay. Well, it's a historical fiction middle grade novel, although I do feel like it appeals to anybody that really enjoys historical fiction. The inspiration for the story comes from a historical site that I live near, Summit Springs, or as the Cheyenne call it, White Butte Creek. It was the last battle in Colorado, and it essentially, that was it. Following that battle, the Cheyenne, Sioux, and Arapaho tribes that occupied Northeastern Colorado, possibly, yeah, well, mostly Northeastern Colorado, they were sent to reservations. So one of the legends surrounding that battle is that there was a 15-year-old Cheyenne boy herding ponies on the bluff above the canyon where the Native Americans were camped. And he was the only one that could see the cavalry that was being led by Pawnee soldiers headed towards the camp. And so he herded the ponies down into the canyon, and many of the women and children were able to jump on the horses and get away. So that was my inspiration. So I invent, that's all we know about Little Hawk.
Yeah.
So I invent Little Hawk's story. It's a coming of age story, but what I do is I alternate chapters. A contemporary 12-year-old finds something that belonged to Little Hawk, and they have a mystical meeting, and Ryan is also sent on this journey to get that back where it belongs. And so the boys' journey juxtapose one another, every other chapter. And so I just have a little coming of age story for middle grade students. I've had several adults that have read it and said that they enjoyed it for the history and the culture that comes out in the story.
Yeah, I was just thinking the other day about how history was taught when I was in school and how very different it is from what actually happened. I remember one of the craziest things I took away from my fifth grade education was that the Civil War was not fought over slavery. So that's what they taught you in the 80s. And I think it's really essential for history to be described in a way that's engaging. Because again, I'm sure you had the same thing when we were in school. It was always just memorizing dates, and I'm terrible with numbers. So not so great at the history, but I do enjoy history when it's given in a way that's engaging and it's a story that you can really get behind. So that's awesome. I'm really excited to hear about your project.
Thank you. And that's what I had in mind as I was writing it. I thought, this could be read in a Colorado history class very easily. And that it was very important to me. I did a lot of research. In fact, one of my mentors, one of my writing mentors, Amber Dolan, she would kind of take me to task and tell me, Luann, stop, just write the story now. But it was very important to me that I was making up so much of Little Hawk's life, all of Little Hawk's life, except for the very last episode. It was very important to me that I represent that Cheyenne life, tradition, culture, as that I honor it by being very accurate with it.
Right. And I think that's super important, especially when you're writing about other cultures that are maybe not your own. I think that's an essential part. So good on you for doing that.
Thanks.
So today we have 13 scientifically proven questions to better know a writer. And by the end of this interview, you should be known by all of our viewers. So are you ready?
I hope I'm ready.
Okay. Number one, you can only have one book for the rest of your life. What would it be?
Oh boy. My favorite is It Makes Me Cry. So I think it would be Snow Falling on Cedars.
Oh, that's a deep one.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. What's your favorite type of pen?
Oh, I'm a retired English teacher. I used to hide my pens when I would have a substitute because and and I wouldn't let anybody borrow my pens because I graded so much. My pens were very important to me. So I am using the Signo Uniball right now, and I
Ah,
like to use different colors. But yes, I'm very fond of my pens.
I also had taken to labeling my pens with my name and a threatening message when I worked in an office. So, uh, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Ireland.
Nice. What truly scares you the most?
Now that's an interesting question because again, one of my writing mentors, Amber, when I would get so tied up in the research and just keep pounding at that, and she would say, just write the story. She told me I was afraid of success.
Another word for that is imposter syndrome.
Uh, I really, yeah, I relate to that. When they saw the my press release in the paper, and oh, you're an author,
Ah,
and I'm so used to saying no, I'm a teacher. It's a mind shift.
for sure. Especially for those of us who don't have their MFAs and yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best book to movie adaptation?
Gosh, I just saw uh the Crawdad. What's that book called? The
Where the Crawdads Sing?
where the Crawdads Sing. And I was really impressed with how they adapted that. I would have thought that would have been a difficult one to adapt, and I was impressed with that.
I have not read that yet, and I haven't seen the movie because I haven't read it yet. I always read the book before I watch the movie,
Mhm.
but I'm waiting for my teenage daughter to finish it before we proceed. So I'm looking
Wonderful,
forward to
wonderful
reading it.
book.
Star Wars or Star Trek, and why is Star Trek better?
Star Trek: The Next Generation. Um, it felt Star Trek: The Next Generation. It felt more cerebral to me than than Star Wars. I have never been able to sit through an entire Star Wars movie, but I've watched every episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I have watched and own every episode of every Star Trek except for Enterprise and every movie. And I'm
Uh-huh.
also from the future birthplace of Captain James T. Kirk, or at least that's where I went to high
Mhm.
school. So, it's very important to me. Where would you say your ideas come from?
Oh, this is what I would tell my students all the time. So I dabble in poetry. Um, uh, I've my ideas come from my life, and that's what I would tell my students when they were writing for me. Essay. If we were doing writers workshop and they were doing different types of poetry or some descriptive pieces or whatever. All writing is creative, so I hate to say creative writing, so that leaves me in a lurch. But I would always tell them, write what you know. So I think that's what I try to do as well.
I think that's good advice for writers for sure. What's my favorite book?
It's gonna be a sci-fi or a horror book, and I read neither, so so that's going to be really hard for me to name a title. I'll just say it's probably one of Stephen King's.
What is the best font?
The best font. Another thing I used to tell my students: Times New Roman 12-point font.
That is the preferred, which is weird because my computer is not set up for that as a default, and I probably could change that, but I'm too dumb to know how to.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
How many notebooks is too many notebooks?
2.
2. Oh, that's really what's the word I'm looking for? That's very disciplined. I have them sitting all over the place. And along those lines, what's on top of your to be read pile or piles?
I just finished, it's called The Princess of Ireland, and it's a history. It's a historical fiction, but it takes you through the history of Ireland in a very unique way. So he invents characters, but it sticks, and it started in 400 AD. So it went clear up to the time of, I just finished it, so it went clear up to Henry VIII. And so I guess I'm going to get the next one of that, which takes us right up to, I think it takes us up to the 1990s, maybe. So that's on my list.
Oh, you're into smart books.
I like historical fiction, and I love Ireland, so it's a fun way to learn about Ireland.
Sure. If you could have coffee with anyone living or dead, who would it be?
Pope Francis.
Very nice. And last, what advice would you give to writers in 5 words?
Don't get bogged down unnecessarily.
Nice. And then the last thing I have to ask you is, what coffee cup are you drinking out of?
I'm drinking out of a Polish pottery coffee cup. I took a liking to Polish pottery recently, so I have a few of these sitting around.
Cool. Well, Luann, thank you so much for your time today. You are known.
Well, thank you, Heather. It was nice seeing you today.